Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus3 Futures and Commodities Show. My name is Ben Maldonado, and as always, I'm here with my partner, Barrie Hederachi. How you doing today, Barrie?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks.
It's good. It's Saturday, September 10th, believe it or not, already September 10th, and we are recording. On today's show, Barrie will cover ES, S&P 500, gold, bonds, the dollar, the euro, and crude oil. And I'll be covering Bitcoin right here, along with NQ, the NASDAQ 100 futures, wheat, corn, and soybeans, copper, crude, and coffee. So we've got a busy show, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
And Barrie, every week I try and see if a theme comes up as I'm reviewing the charts. And this week we're on a knife's edge. Things could go either way in many, many markets. And we'll see that as we go through our review.
Right.
Bitcoin is not one of them, though. Bitcoin, the probabilities and the odds pretty strongly favor down, as they have for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, also, if you're new to our show, we try and create a story with the charts that we review every week. Bitcoin is one of them. Barrie does the big five every week. Go back and listen to previous shows. It'll help you sort of catch up and see where we are in the story. And last week in Bitcoin, I highlighted sort of this fractal in this box from early 2022 that it looked like we're repeating. And we got another piece to the puzzle this week that's kind of doing the same thing. We had this sell-off from the high, and then a bump up, sell off from the high, and now this is the bump up, which if we continue to follow is the precursor to a big drop, which should take us right into our target range here. The bottom line here, as long as we're below this trend line, as long as we're below this full square, we're in bearish territory, and the weight of the evidence remains to the downside because that's where we are right now. Also, I threw in some timing just to check the fractal timing. Low to high here was 46 days. Low to high here was 40. The high to low, once we made the high, was 31. If we project out 31 days, it's going to take us into around September 27th. So the skid could be fast and furious next couple of weeks. We'll see. Any other comments you want to make on the Bitcoin chart here, Barrie, as you're looking at it?
Well, I really like the trend line above, and I think the fractal pattern you might have nailed, and it'll be easy to see, and not much else other than it looks like it's going lower. That's what it looks like. Looks like it's a classic pattern of you break the trend line, come from below, and kiss it before it drops.
Mm-hmm.
And the kiss is right there at the arrow from below, right? So
yep, exactly.
So that's one. If it misses that, we have the bigger trend line from above. So one or the other.
We'll see how it plays out.
Yes.
Let me throw it over to you, and let's go over to Big Five and see these markets that are on the edge. Here's the ES.
Yes. Busy making a corner.
It looks like you're right up against that downtrend line.
Mm-hmm. Like you said, a lot of things are on the edge, right? So
yeah, just could go either way right now.
Right. So I'm going to start zooming in a little bit. We had a couple of comments, people asking for bigger charts. So I think one of the things we're going to do, picking up from where we left off, 39.40 was the key level we were watching to see if we can clear that or not. And if we kind of got stuck under that, we're expecting it to go up and test 38.25. And if 39 was held, we'd expected it to go up and test at least 41.25. So what ended up happening was somewhere in between. We broke below 39.40 a little bit. It held it for one day. Really didn't have any air under it. I mean, all the bars had partially above, partially below, so it was kind of in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And then, by Wednesday, we came up and took it out, and you can see how Thursday low held above that level and moved on up. And I don't think we talked about it on here. Maybe we looked at this chart once, but we posted this while back on Twitter looking at these forks, and this was published, obviously before the low came in. And when the low did come in, we were on top of it, trying to watch it to see if it would hold. So that was a really important line that the market held. And we don't always have time to talk about everything on the weekend show, but if you guys follow us on Twitter, we'll, anytime there's a corner or something that we think is building up, we usually post it. Anyway, getting back to what's at hand, we cleared, we had that low come in on that fork low. That was okay. We cleared the 39.40. It would have been nice if it would stopped exactly on there, but you know how the markets are. So we went up. Anyway, we cleared it. Previously, we talked about around 40.40, 40.38, 39 being an important area. And I think that's going to continue to be that. So let me see here. I'll borrow one of these lines. So for next week, a key level to watch would be 40.38. And, that was a 100-point run, right? We had free reign there. If we can manage to be above 40.38, if we can hold that on pullbacks or whatnot, we can kind of get stuck above it, let's say. Then 41.25 is the next big level of resistance. If we take that out, then probably a lot higher. And the reason I say a lot higher is the reasoning is in the weekly chart, and we'll take a look at that in a little bit. But for now, 40.38 is going to be the key level. Actually, let me change this 41.25 to 41.40. I think there we go. That's probably a better level. Not a whole lot more, but a little bit higher. So this is the next. It's funny, we're all jumping in 40s, kind of rhythm. 40.38 is the key level. 41.40 is the next resistance. If we fail 40.38, I would expect a test of 39.40. So you're about 100 points, at least 100 points down, just to test that line. And if that goes, then probably back to 38.25. And we're in one of those times where these things can happen. And the level to watch for any evidence of that would be market getting stuck under 40.38. But if we can hold this level, I think we're going to move higher, especially on any kind of a correction. But if you lose that, then expect 39.40 to be the next place to hold, and 38.25 following that. Anything you want to add?
No, just that we closed at a really important spot on my daily. The full square is like 40.70. We closed just under that. So this 40.70 to 40.80 area, if it doesn't hold next week, then I agree with you. We're going up higher. But if we lose it and we reverse, just look from the low. You got one push up, then one push down, and this would be the second push up, and we could catch a third coming down. So that's what I mean. It's knife's edge right now for me.
So the other thing is, if you
right like that right there.
The key here is a high. It was a long kind of a sloppy high, and sometimes this false break bar works for timing and using squares. Sometimes it doesn't. But either way, we have about a 5-day spread, and if you use that and we go more towards let's say we use the false break high, we're coming up on 180 and we're running up into 180. So it's possible we go up into that and we turn down for whatever the next leg down is. So we got to watch it. It's one of those times, right? We're in the midst of it, and if
we do turn down, it's gonna be a third wave starting down.
If we do
off of that high, that August high, saying off the August high. So it'll be a fast one. Yeah.
So there is some timing, especially this 180. It's kind of a big deal. It would have been, if we went down into the 180, that would give us at least it will be a sign of a decent low.
Yeah.
And this low was okay, but it wasn't, not a lot of fanfare. It was okay. It was okay. Enough for this, I guess. So for now, just watch these levels. That'll help sort of figure out which side we're on. This 40.38 is a key level to watch if we get above or below that. And let's take a look at the weekly. So weekly, what the importance here is, let me zoom in. The key thing here to watch is we came down 72 degrees, right? That was a good enough of a measured move. And we got a decent bounce off of it. All right, fine. And then on the pullback, we've been watching this 38.96 to be a key level, and I've had it there for, I don't know, for a while. And so what happened week before, we came very close to it. Last week, we sort of did a false break, like, on the shorter time frames, and an outside bar reversal. So this is kind of a big deal. And because of this, trying not to get too bearish about this leg down, because it held at the number that we were looking for support. Yeah. And this low held at a level that where we were looking for support. And the price action was supporting a lot of buying coming in at that level, because basically it's an outside bar with a pretty decent high close. So this is bullish, but in a bear market, these bullish patterns might not be as bullish as we might want them to be. So watch, like they say, look at both sides of the street before you cross.
For sure.
And that's all I'm doing here. Yeah, we have a good support here. We have good support here, but the big trend is still down. The weekly trend line is still down, and we're still below the halfway of the square, 50%. We got below that, really couldn't hold above it. So in the bigger picture, it's somewhat weak, but we have to respect the levels that it held. And the way we resolve that is by focusing on these levels that we talk about, basis, the daily chart. And of course, the stuff that we do, we see on a day-to-day basis, we update on Twitter. So if you guys aren't following, you can follow us there. All the information is under the description, along with all the chapter marks. So if you want to jump to different markets, you can just go there and do that. And while you're doing that, you can also, it'd be really good if you could hit the likes and the shares and the alerts, help us grow, especially shares, because there are other people that might, if you think there are others that could benefit. Anything you want to add to the S&P? I think that's all I have. Just to remember that there's a 180-degree mark coming up, which is close to a 90, low to low. So that could end up becoming a decent high, either this week or, by the close of this week, it will be up at 90. So it's a crucial week. And because of the pattern and all the cycles that are coming in, we could just see a whole bunch of volatility up and down, and maybe not a really clean trend. So, and that's especially when you need the levels to help frame what the market is doing. So here we have, 40.38 to hold the balance for the week, either we're above or below that. If it's above that, 41.40 is the next point. Below that, 39.40. All right, enough with the E-mini. Let's move on to bonds. Bonds are, well, here's our 132. Guess where we stopped last week?
Yeah, the low of the week.
Low of the week, 132. And I just can't imagine that we're going to leave this hanging there.
So, all right.
So, and, we're below,
we're getting stuck under that half square. Yep.
Exactly. We always talk about getting stuck, below a level or holding above a level. And this is a good example of that, where the market is really clearly below the 50% of the square and just hanging on to 132. So this looks bearish. Looks like we can go lower. And you can even see the last Friday, right? I mean, they tried to put it up. The sellers came in, kind of closed on the low, inside bar. The whole thing looks a little weak. We'll leave it at that. Looking at the weekly bonds, we have, let's zoom in. We have the half square, and this is the line we've been focusing on, and it's around 132 also. First, we found support there, bounced up, came back. If this is the one, this too is awfully bad looking too. At least for a bull market in the bond. So this is either we're stuck in this range for a while, or we're going to take these lows out. And looking at the daily, it looks super weak. So I think if last week's low goes, it's probably going to slip past this in a hurry.
Mhm.
and that opens up an entire new half square to the downside. So I would watch that, and you can look at these weeks, right? 1, 2,
6 weeks down.
6 weeks down. We probably do one more before we're gonna even correct. So that's just what it looks like. Anything you want to add?
Just that the monthly bonds, it remains below the 40-year trend line, which is around 136.
Mhm.
It sort of tapped it a few times at once it broke the low and just can't get a close over it.
Yeah, it's weak. So we'll just leave it at that. Moving on to crude. Our favorite.
It had an interesting week.
Yes. So, well, we dropped this channel last week while we're doing the show, and we had this other channel already drawn in from a while back. And looks like we went down into, what are we, 135 days down roughly from the high, and reversed. We were looking at this 83 to be a key level. We're kind of, it's not exactly stopping on that, but it's the geometry sort of holding it. Like I said earlier, long as we're inside of this circle, as far as circle work goes, it's in a weak position. So I'm not quite ready to be long this thing anytime soon until we take this circle out one or the other. But
If we go sideways, what's the timing like to take the circle out?
Well, if we go sideways perfectly, it'll be September 22nd would be when it's going to meet the
Couple weeks. Yep.
couple of weeks. But what happens is as the curve gets steeper, the slope gets steeper, market trend would just sort of slip out. This is sort of like that marching pattern, right? So march, boop, 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 and all of a sudden it drops and finishes up.
Right.
If it does that, then, we're hoping 73 might be the level. If it obviously could go a lot lower, and if it does, I think it's a better opportunity to follow up on. So for now, if it's just going to hang around here, the 91, 85, 83, below 91 is clearly on the weak side. So this is all just chop, 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 but chop, chop to the weak side, right? You have another trend line coming right through here. So for me, next week is a week to watch this, to see how it's going to resolve, to which side of 83, let's say. Can we hold above or not? But still, 91 is sort of the major balance point. And you can see how once we get on top of the bottom, it really tends to stay, right? Like this group here, below, above, below, above, below, right? And then this leg became under that even. So all this is overhead now, and we're stuck under it. Yeah, I think we have a little bit more time till this is ready to turn around. So I think the downside is still in force. Looking at the weekly crude, we had this trend line for a while, and we found support at the trend line, and that recovery doesn't look that great. So we'll have to wait and see. But if this is the key thing, right? If the weekly low goes next week, if we take out this low, then I think we're definitely open for business down into the mid 70s at least, or 73, and that low is 81. Yeah, that's all I have to say for that.
Okay.
Anything on the weekly you want to talk about? Or
No, I'm gonna highlight crude.
this week?
So I'll just save it. We'll talk about it when I look at it.
All right, good. So there's a square, we're well below that.
Mhm.
And the next square the next halfway, 50% is under 75. So 73, that's the next area we're looking at. Moving on to gold. Not much to add. We basically went sideways, and that 1730 is really sort of holding, really couldn't do much above that. You can see all the tails above it. So I think going forward, it's pretty much the same. If we watching to see if we can recover 1730 or not. And so far it's looking fairly weak. Moving on to the weekly gold. Pretty much the same story. We talked about the 1750. If we can, hang above that or not, we couldn't. We're below that. But above the 1670 level that we've been looking at, and the square, right? It's holding this really, really important level. I would say 1670 would be the bottom of that, but the range is right in there. And it's just holding. We'll have to see, how much time it has to pass before changing the character here.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we have a 1-2, we'll have to see how it goes. It might just keep doing 1-2s. On the weekly basis, we know it's holding. It's in a fairly firm position. But if these levels go, boy, then we got a lot of downside in a panic kind of a downside. I mean, look at that tight pack, right? Can you imagine
Mm-hmm.
1670 going now?
It
So
it looks like there needs to be one more push to clean it up, doesn't it? One more push lower.
sure it does. Yeah, I would. Yeah, it looks like it, but key thing is to find when it's going to happen. So
Yep.
we'll have to see. I mean, it could get down to here, be the last ABCD.
Mm-hmm.
That's around 1620,
Mm-hmm.
say. But let's leave it alone, let it rest up, and be ready.
That's right.
All right, move it on. Actually, let me bring in copper because we had a couple of requests for us to look at copper every week. So I'll do that. I don't have time to, maybe next week I'll do a little bit more of a workup on copper and talk about it. For now, let's just say it's in a weak position because it's under the 50% of the square. So we could bang around here for a little while. And this is that fork I was telling you about, Ben. You can see how the high of the Friday high was right there.
Right on the median line. Yep.
Yeah. Plus being under the square, the 50% of the square, it's kind of in a weak position. So we'll watch that and update. But if we take this out, take out Friday's high, then we have a shot at actually testing this along with this the prior high in August. So for now, I don't see a lot other than, it's possible that we spend some time sideways. It's not a setup for me because of this, as long as we're below this high. Looking at the weekly copper, did I even work anything up? Yeah. So
nice support there on the 90.
Well, weekly, it's a little bit more, a little bit more exciting, I guess. We did 180 up, came back, found support right around the 90, and we pulled back. And also we have this channel that's kind of holding together fairly well. So I would say long as we're above the 90, we could always grind up slowly. So that's about 340. That's where the 90 is. And we'll do a little thing we'll work up from the historical lows next time because
and I'm actually going to talk about copper today, so I'll add a little more detail in.
Next up would be the dollar. Dollar didn't quite get to 112 yet, but we got to almost 111.
And it hit the timing, man. Look at that timing.
Timing was pretty darn good, and that's the thing that you really have to watch, right, when they come up. So we'll see how that goes. For now, 107 is our key level for now. So long as we're above that, it's the momentum should be, these are considered to be pullbacks, and looks like we should really get into 111 and around 112. This ABCD would be actually the perfect place for a good high, and that would give us another nice 3 drives up. See that? This is kind of 3 drives, but didn't quite get the momentum that we need. So dollar bullish for now. Like where else people are going to go, right? And the weekly dollar, it's even more bullish. Well, what can you say? Just straight up. And
so far we're holding that at 156 level.
Yeah, we're holding. I mean, all the weekly lows are higher lows, higher lows, higher lows. So it's in a good position. Little overbought in the sense of momentum, but and we do have 3 drives, and the 3rd drive is really losing it. We'll see. But markets also get sloppy as they go higher before the final, so it might end up getting a little sloppy here. But the key level, even though the weekly is 108, almost 109, 107 is the key level to watch basis daily. So we're well above that, and looks okay for now. And it's even holding the steep trend line. So what are you going to do? you stay long, that's what you're going to do.
And you ride the momentum. Yep.
That's right. So looking at the euro, pretty much the same story reversed. Last week we went down and made a new low, bounced off. So I think we talked about this parity sort of acting like a mean reversion point. And so far it's sort of doing that. We're starting to wrap around that. And I don't have much for this other than, on a shorter term basis, I guess short side would be the side to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll work out some levels next week, because for now, the reason I didn't was we figured it's just going to kind of chop around, which it has been doing. So I think it's probably going to continue next week, and then we'll figure it out after that. For now, it's just chop, which is pretty clear, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and looking at the weekly euro, we came to 1/3 of the square, but I think 1/2 is more like where we should find some support, and that's around 96. This 87 seems more like a reasonable target. I don't know how that's going to happen, but this trend, boy, it just gets steeper and steeper, and we haven't really done that final sort of the flush like we did here.
Exactly.
So we haven't seen the blood yet. It's just
it's been a controlled demolition.
Yeah, it's exactly. And I mean, look at it just very weak price action, right? It takes about 5 days to go up, and it's 2 days to take it all out. So it's really weak. All right, that's what I have for my time slot. Let's get back to the daily charts. Yeah, I think that's all I got.
Okay. Good review.
Thanks. And let me put it back to you, and we'll look at the commodities.
Sounds good.
Well, Ben, you weren't kidding when you said it's make or break.
Knife's edge.
Yeah, it's right.
And it's a lot of markets are like this too, Barry. Really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So let's pick up the story with the NQs. On this rebound high, half square stopped us on the way down. Full square stopped us on the low. We bounced up. We closed above the half square. So the level, this level of, call it 12,500, which, by the way, all the levels that we talk about are on a Google Doc spreadsheet. In case you don't get them when you're watching the show, all the levels are there, and you can look them up at any time. So we closed above that, but we closed right at trend line resistance. So the major bull bear line for me this week for the NQs is right here.
Yeah.
If we're above it, we open up the possibility of rallying towards the full square. If we fail here and we get stuck below it, we're basically going to retest that. And if we retest it, we're going to take it out. So it really looks knife's edge to me, right? Like, so this could have been a 1. We could pull back here. If this level is held and we push higher, you can conceivably do an ABC and head up into here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the cycles we're dealing with and the sort of the big picture environment we're looking at, it doesn't favor, the odds don't favor us taking off and, screaming higher and making all kinds of new highs. We just have to, from a technical standpoint, be aware of, where are the markers where we have to start, stepping back and reconsidering. And I think this is a good one this week on the NQs, is this 12.5 level. We get above it, we could push up to the top of the square, which is 13.1. If it fails there, then that's fine, and we could roll over again. But if we fail here, you're looking at a fast move coming to the downside and probably taking out these June lows to boot. A little bit on the timing. I have these in place from, high to low of the whole move, and then this one high to low of a different leg, and I just threw them on there to give you different ideas of potential timing. The shortest one we're looking at is November 2nd, and then the 90 takes us into Christmas week around December 20th. So just something to keep in mind from a timing standpoint. What else do you have to add here looking at this NQ chart?
Well, Ben, it looks like your half square is pretty close to the 4038 on the S&P. So I really feel like that's a balance point going forward. So we'll watch that. and see how it works forward.
Yeah, I mean, bigger picture hasn't changed, right? We're in a downtrend. We're just trying to figure out, where's the next move here. This is shorter term stuff, but
Exactly.
yeah, this 12.5 for the NQs is the key this week. So watch that one. All right, let's jump over into the commodities now. Let's go to the grains, and we'll start with wheat. Hammering out a bottom. I mean, you can sort of see how we're curving, starting to curve now. Notice Friday's close. We closed the week on the high. That was very bullish on the high of that day. So expect some follow through here. A lot like a lot of these charts, there is a definitive line we're watching now. Here, it's the half square. And on wheat, the half square here, call it 847, 848. As long as we're above that, this thing looks ready to go. It's doing what it needs to do, right? We came down, we made this false break, pretty quickly recaptured the full square. Now we've been, banging around behind and below the half square. Took a couple shots at getting up, and then Friday we got the first close above the half square. So this looks bullish, looks like it's ready to move. And if you look at the grains, you'll see they're in three different sort of phases. This one is sort of in the middle phase where we got a good confidence that the low is in here. Now we've got higher highs and higher lows, and we're pushing out. And the next one will be corn, which is the furthest along. But before we jump to corn, Barrie, anything else you want to add here on wheat?
Well, nothing to add. I think you're right on it. You called it out last week, and we're moving higher. So the basic idea here is to really watch your counter trends from here on going forward, because we could have a decent low in place.
Yep.
Yeah.
It looks good for now.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into corn, and you'll see corn is further along than wheat. Similar bottoming pattern, right? It was making, hammering out the low, got a little false break here, and then shot right out. Notice this, because this is the pattern you want to watch when we're dealing with these squares, right? You come up, first time it tries, fails, but where did it find support? Half square. Next time we push up, can't really get below that square anymore. And then we get one bar where there's nothing below the square, and you take off. Now we're doing the same sort of, jig-jag pattern right around this other square, the top of the square here. And on Friday, we had the first definitive push where barely got below it with the open and the closed on the high. So corn, the low looks good. We're starting to push up. We're starting to capture new levels and push to new squares, which is what a bull market does. So corn looks very good, and it's the furthest along of all three grains. Anything else catch your eye here on corn you want to point out, Barrie?
Well, I think now we have to switch gears. We looks like the bottoming kind of worked out, and the uptrend is doing fairly well. The momentum looks good. So basically go back to the basics and trade the counter trends to the long side.
That's right. Find entries on the counter trends to the long side. And the last one, which is the least far along, but it looks like we made some moves this week that'll help us classify what's going on here, is soybeans. We had a really good low here where we had this ABCD down on a half square, really good low, and then we got a nice move out of it. Here we have a nice counter trend down, and look what we found support on Friday.
Yeah.
Right. We were banging around this thing for about a week. And this is the pattern in a lot of commodities, which we're going to go over. It's a pattern in crude. It's a pattern in copper. It's a pattern in coffee. Almost all the ones we're going to show, where we've made an initial thrust up off of a low and a sharp pullback. And now we're trying to decide, are we going to get this wave 3 move up, or worst case, even an ABC, which will, take you up into here. It's nothing to sneeze at. Or are we going to roll over and take out these lows? And Barrie showed that in the gold pattern as well. So that's why I say a lot of these markets are on the knife's edge here, and these levels are really, really important, because they're going to tell you and give you clues, which way do probabilities favor. by holding this full square, as long as we stay above this full square, we know probabilities favor that, hey, we've got a higher low, and we could launch here in a wave 3 higher. So look, remember this pattern, because as I said, we're going to look at copper, we're going to look at crude, and we're going to look at coffee, and you'll see similar patterns there. Anything else to add here on beans, Barrie?
Well, I think once that trend line breaks, watch out.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
So the setup's in place.
Watch out either way, but it looks like pushes the upside with the other grains taken off. So
yeah.
So
this is the pattern. This is what you want to catch, right? We want to catch those third waves. We want to catch that higher low coming off of a good low, and that's the setup we're seeing. You never have 100% certainty, so we just don't know. If we get stuck below here, then you got to call it off and say, all right, now we're going to see it. Are we going to do a false break, or are we going to start a whole nother leg down? So this is the key level.
Yep.
That's beans. All right, let's go look at copper. And I know you touched on copper in your segment. Recognize that pattern?
Yep.
This is a little more confidence pattern, because there's a nice clean sort of move down, and we squared out here on support, pushed up strongly, pulled back, held the full square. Now we're testing this half square. So if you want to have an even higher sense of confidence, let's wait till we clear that half square, take out that high, clear this half square, and then we should be taking off. But it's a nice low thrust, higher low on support, right? Holding good support. Let's give you what that level is. It's in the spreadsheet, but let's give it to you here. Talking about 339, 340. As long as we're above 339 or 340, we're in a bullish position here, and we're in a position where we can catch the third going up. The key level on the upside we got to break is the half square. Call it 362, 363.
And, in my chart is really key level, because coming off the high in March, that high is at a 90 degree level. So that's 90 down. Exact high there is 90 down on my daily.
Right here.
So so it's really important.
Yep.
If we can't make it, then we got more to go to the downside or sideways, consolidating in here.
Exactly. It doesn't have to collapse either. It could just chop around and frustrate everybody, in sideways. But we know the levels, right? And this is why these squares are so helpful. If you didn't have these, can you imagine trying to figure out where the hell you are in this move?
And the low squared out from the high, at least, using
it did.
Static squares. Yeah. It was 120 by 90.
Yeah, it was a good square right here. So we have a good low. We have a nice thrust. First pullback. Now we're really keenly watching, because if the next move is the fast move higher, this is the one you want to catch. This is what we wait for. This is what we try to isolate. So that's why I wanted to show copper this week. Let's jump over and take a look at crude. Now, why am I showing crude? Does it mean, hey, I'm super bullish, you got to jump on crude right now? Absolutely not. I think everything Barrie reviewed in his segment on crude is true. 75 is in the cards if we lose this level. So right now in my work, 8160, 8150 is key, because it's the full square. And what did we get off of the full square, right? We came down, we hit the full square, 2 days, and then look at that move out. Encouraging. Does it mean all clear? Hey, everything's bullish, jump all over crude? No, not yet. But it's the early signs. And if you notice the other charts we looked at, we had the low, we had the first thrust up, and we had a pullback. Here, we're just trying to isolate the corner, right? This is the sort of high risk territory, because we just don't know if we have a low yet. We do have some geometry here. We have a nice trend line that we call it. We have the full square. That all helps us. We have good structure. Look at the highs over here from last year, right in this area. So it's early, but it needs to be on your radar now because this is how the lows develop. Now we could turn around, we could lose this full square, and then we could go down and test that 75, which is very key on higher time frames, weekly, monthlies. So I just wanted to show crude from that standpoint to give you an idea of how sort of philosophically we try and look at this, which is you isolate the low first, get that first thrust up, find a higher low on the pullback, and then you catch the huge move.
Mm-hmm.
So you covered crude. We don't need to belabor it anymore, but it's on the radar. It's a candidate, just like the grains were, 6-8 weeks ago when we started talking about them when they were coming into those lows. Crude's in a similar spot now as they were, 6-8 weeks ago. So keep it on your radar. Last one we'll look at is one of the softs, which is coffee. And again, you'll recognize the pattern. This one's been more sideways, but we came into a low, right? Pushed down over a multi-month low, 6-month low, basically. Had our first push up, nice move up off the low. We've gotten a pullback, and now we're sitting here in kind of in no man's land at the lows. But look at what we did on Friday. Pushed up, closed at the highs. So now the key level here is this half square.
Right.
And that's, call it 231, 232 area. You get up above that and you clear, we then have a high, higher low, and now a reversal of that low on a daily. Again, setting up the possibility of catching a fast move coming out of here.
Mm-hmm.
The areas where you'd have to say, hey, it's no go, there's still more work to do on the downside or more chop. If we lose this full square in the 212 area, then it's not going anywhere. But this has been kind of a choppy, sloppy little correction here. Stopped right on top of the previous highs, as we were coming out of the hole. And then Friday, for whatever reason, big move up.
Right.
Watch this half square. That's the key. If we clear that this week, it should be full speed ahead for higher prices for coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else stand out to you here on this one?
Well, that it came right on top of the old resistance, so it's in good shape. We broke out. Here's a retest, and technically we should go.
Yeah. So this is why I say we're at knife's edge in a lot of markets. Barrie showed you, several of the markets he covered where they could go either way depending upon levels. I gave you examples of some of the commodities. There's gold, there's silver. Those are also in similar positions. So the idea is we are at a very, very critical point here in the markets, and all the different markets are telling us that. It's key to know the levels where, hey, if we go this way, it's bullish. If we go that way, it's bearish, because they could literally go either way right now. What are you looking at this week, Barrie?
Well, everything that's on the edge, basically.
Yeah.
Bonds are going to be interesting because we want to see if it's going to break hard. S&P to see if we can hold and continue into Friday, and crude to see if we can break one or the other. Yeah, everything, just kind of watching everything broadly.
And remember, when we're talking about things here, we're looking at the shorter term on this show. The monthly show that Barrie and I do is sort of the 10,000 foot view, bigger picture, risk, bonds, NQs, ES, those are all looking lower. Commodities are all looking higher, bigger picture. So don't, if you hear us talking about two different things and you say, well, I thought you said this was bullish, got to understand the time frames, right? Here we're being more tactical. Here we're being more sort of week to week, hand to hand combat, whereas the show gives us the view of bigger picture, the next 2-3 years, where are these markets going? So right. This is a critical week for the sort of tactical trading, where the market's going in the next week, 2 month. That's what we're really focusing on, and why it's sort of a knife's edge, as we've been saying this week, depending on which way the levels go. So watch your markets, watch your levels, and it should be active this week. You definitely won't be bored. Thanks for your work, Barrie, and let's have a good week.
All right. Thanks for the coverage, Ben, and have a good week, everybody. We'll see
Thanks.
you next time.
Bye.